Can you believe that the 1976 Ford Mustang II Cobra II is often voted the worst muscle car ever made? Quite a shocker, isn't it? Muscle cars. They're the embodiment of America's love for power, speed, and freedom. These high-performance vehicles, with their roaring V8 engines and aggressive aesthetics, have become an integral part of our automotive culture and history. From the late 50s to the early 70s, often referred to as the golden age of muscle cars, these beasts ruled the roads and the racetracks, capturing the hearts of many. However, not all muscle cars were created equal. While some models are celebrated for their power and performance, others have been less than impressive. Yes, even in this realm of high-octane glory, there have been misses, and some of these misses are quite surprising. Take, for example, the 1976 Ford Mustang II Cobra II, a muscle car that wears the badge of two iconic American powerhouses. The Mustang and the Cobra should be a symbol of performance and style, right? Well, not in this case. The 76 Cobra II is often voted as the worst muscle car ever made. Its underwhelming performance and questionable aesthetics left many muscle car enthusiasts disappointed. This Mustang, which was supposed to carry forward the legacy of its glorious predecessors, ended up being a letdown. But the Cobra II isn't the only one. There have been several other muscle cars throughout history that have failed to live up to expectations. Some lacked power, others lacked style, and some just lacked that special something that makes a muscle car, well, a muscle car. These are the models that time and again find themselves on the list of the worst muscle cars ever made. They serve as a reminder that even in the world of muscle cars, not everything that glitters is gold. So brace yourselves as we embark on this journey of automotive disappointment. So let's dive into the fascinating world of the 20 worst muscle cars ever made. Kicking off our countdown at number 20, we have the Chevrolet Chevelle Laguna. This car, released in the mid-70s, was a far cry from the muscle cars of the 60s. With a drastically reduced horsepower due to emission regulations, the Chevelle Laguna was underpowered and overpriced. Next at number 19, we find the Ford Mustang II King Cobra. This car might have been a king in name, but it certainly wasn't in performance. The King Cobra was a product of the 70s oil crisis, and it showed. With a weighty body and a lackluster engine, this supposed muscle car was more of a slow-moving serpent than a King Cobra. At number 18, we have the AMC Rebel Machine. The Rebel Machine was a car with a lot of promise, but it fell short in delivering on that promise. While it had an impressive engine, the poor handling and subpar build quality let it down. The Rebel Machine was more of a rebel without a cause. Number 17 gives us the Plymouth Velar Roadrunner. The Roadrunner cartoon character emblazoned on the car was faster than this underwhelming vehicle. The Velar Roadrunner was plagued by quality issues from the get-go. It was certainly no meep-meep on the road. Finally, at number 16, we have the Mercury Montego GT. This car was a classic case of style over substance. The Montego GT had a sleek design that was a real head-turner. However, under the hood, it was a different story. With a lack of power and poor fuel efficiency, this car was more of a showpiece than a muscle machine. These cars, while they might have had their moments of glory, are a stark reminder that not all that glitters is gold. They had the looks, the names, and the hype, but they lacked the heart of a true muscle car, power and performance. Moving on to the next set, let's see which cars made it to our 15th to 11th spots. At number 15, we have the Chevrolet El Camino SS. While the El Camino was a beloved model, the SS variant was a letdown. It was marketed as a high-performance vehicle, but it failed to deliver with an underpowered engine that couldn't compete with its rivals. The car also suffered from poor handling and a lack of refinement, earning it a spot on our list. Moving on to number 14, the Oldsmobile 442 W30. This car was a victim of the emission control era. While earlier 442 models were celebrated for their power, the W30 was a pale shadow of its predecessors. The car was bogged down by heavy emission control equipment, leading to a significant drop in performance. At number 13, we find the Ford Mustang II King Cobra. This car had the looks with its aggressive styling and iconic Cobra emblem, but it was all show and no-go. The King Cobra was fitted with a V8 engine, yet it produced less than 140 horsepower, which was a disappointment for Mustang fans. Next up at number 12 is the Mercury Cyclone. This car had potential, with its aerodynamic design and promising features. However, it was plagued by a series of mechanical issues, including a problematic transmission and unreliable engine. It's a classic case of good intentions gone awry. finally, at number 11, we have the Dodge Charger Daytona. This car was a bold experiment, with its massive rear wing and aerodynamic nose cone. However, it was too radical for its time, and many found it unattractive. Additionally, the car's performance didn't live up to its audacious design, with a lackluster engine that failed to impress. These 5 cars serve as cautionary tales in the muscle car world. They remind us that power and performance should never be sacrificed for the sake of style or novelty. The cars are getting worse. Let's see what the top 10 has in store for us. Breaking into the top 10 at number 10 is the Ford Mustang II. Now, don't get me wrong, the Mustang is an iconic line, but this 74 to 78 model was a major misstep. It was built during the oil crisis, and Ford decided to use a smaller, more fuel-efficient engine. Unfortunately, it resulted in a muscle car that had, well, very little muscle. Next up at number 9 is the Plymouth Valkyrie Roadrunner. Named after the famous cartoon bird, this car was anything but fast. Its underwhelming performance and lackluster design were a far cry from the Roadrunner's earlier glory days. At number 8, we have the AMC Rebel Machine. It sounds like a beast, right? Well, it was more like a kitten. The Rebel Machine was a one-year wonder in 1970 that ended up being a disappointment. It was heavy, it was slow, and it just didn't live up to the hype. Coming in at number 7 is the Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS. The super sport version of the Monte Carlo was supposed to be a high-performance machine, but it failed to deliver. It had a big engine, but the power was just not there. It was more of a show car than a go-car, if you catch my drift. And finally, at number 6, we have the Dodge Charger SE. The special edition Charger was a massive letdown. It was billed as a luxury muscle car, but it was neither luxurious nor muscular. The interior was subpar, and the performance was far from special. So, there you have it. From the lackluster Mustang II to the disappointing Charger SE, these are some of the worst muscle cars that have ever graced our roads. But remember, beauty, or in this case, ugliness, is in the eye of the beholder. So if you happen to own one of these, don't take it personally. It's all in good fun. We're almost there. Brace yourselves for the top 5 worst muscle cars. At number 5, we have the Ford Mustang II, a car that had the looks but not the power. A victim of the oil crisis of the 70s, Ford downsized the Mustang, stripping it of its muscle car status. With its weak engines and lackluster performance, this model is a disappointment to the Mustang lineage. Sliding into the 4th spot is the Chevrolet Chevelle Laguna Type S3. This car was supposed to be a high-performance variant of the Chevelle, but it ended up being just a fancy trim level. The Laguna Type S3 had a hefty price tag and an underpowered engine, making it fall short of the muscle car glory it was intended to achieve. On the 3rd rung of the ladder, we find the Dodge Charger Daytona. This car was designed for high speed, but it was too heavy and had poor aerodynamics. Its massive rear wing and pointed nose cone were more of a hindrance than a help, making it more of a show car than a muscle car. Runner-up in the 2nd place is the Pontiac Grand Prix SJ. Despite being named after the famous motorsport event, this car was far from a racing machine. It was bulky, slow, and had a sluggish automatic transmission. The Grand Prix SJ was more of a luxury coupe than a muscle car, and it didn't live up to the performance expectations set by its name. And now, drumroll please, the worst muscle car ever made, the AMC Gremlin X Levi's Edition. This oddball car was a product of a collaboration between a car manufacturer and a jeans company. The result? A car with denim upholstery. As far as performance goes, the Gremlin X was mediocre at best, and its strange design choices landed at the top of our list. And there you have it, the worst muscle car ever made. Let's do a quick recap. In our countdown from 20 to 1, we've seen some rather disappointing muscle cars. To put it lightly, these are the cars that didn't quite live up to the muscle car legacy. We kicked off with the Mercury Cyclone, a car that promised a storm but delivered more of a drizzle. The Pontiac Grand Prix followed, a car that had the name of a race but lagged far behind in performance. As we moved down the list, we encountered the Buick Skylark, a bird that never really took flight. The Chrysler 300 Hearst was up next, a car that may have been big in size but fell short when it came to speed. Then we had the Dodge Dart Swinger, a car that swayed away from the true muscle car spirit. The Oldsmobile Toronado was another letdown, a tornado that barely caused a breeze. Moving into the top 10, we met the Ford Mustang II, the sequel that nobody asked for. The Chevrolet Monte Carlo followed, a car that gambled with its design and lost. The AMC Javelin SST was a car that missed its mark, and the Plymouth Valkyrie Roadrunner, a car that couldn't outrun its poor design. The top 5 worst muscle cars were the Chevrolet Camaro Iron Duke, a car that was more Tin Man than Iron Duke, the Ford Torino, a car that couldn't quite dance to the muscle cartoon, the Pontiac Tempest, a storm that fizzled out before it began, the Dodge Charger SE, a car that charged into mediocrity, and lastly, the AMC Gremlin X, a car that was more of a pest than a muscle car. These cars serve as reminders that not all that glitters is gold, and not all that roars is a muscle car. Remember, not all muscle cars are created equal. Some are born to be classics, others, well, they're on this list. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the worst muscle cars ever made.